Okay, so this video is going to be about writing the equation of a perpendicular line. So, fact, this is what you need to know. The only thing we know about perpendicular lines, without having any given other information other than that they are perpendicular, is that they are what we call negative reciprocals. So basically, if a over b is my slope, then negative 1 times b over a, so the reciprocal, so take the reciprocal of what you have, multiply it by negative 1, and you will have your perpendicular slope. I.e., what was once positive will become negative, and then what was once on top in the numerator will become in the denominator. So you will flip them in the reciprocal. So I will show you two ways to do this on the next slide. But the fact is that you can't escape perpendicular lines without knowing the fact that they are said to be negative reciprocals. However, which way you attack it to complete it so that they do end up that way is up to you. However, I will give you two ways of thought. So here we go. So, first way of thought is by using basically the formula. So if you're a formula person, this is your route. I will say, if you start memorizing a lot of formulas, it becomes kind of hard because you're filling up your brain with a lot of stuff. But like I said to you, if you're a formula person, no worries, that's fine. So what you will do is simply, every single time, if you're a formula person, you will take the reciprocal and multiply it by negative 1. So you will do negative 1 times 4 over 3. So my final answer is negative 4/3. Done. Okay, so again, I will do the same thing here. I will take negative 1, multiply it by negative 1/2, so take the reciprocal of that, and you get negative 2 over 1. So when I multiply those two together, I get negative 1 times negative 2, which is positive 2. So my new perpendicular slope will have a slope of 2. Lastly, I go to 5. So now, here's the other way, okay? The other way is, this was once positive, my answer is going to be negative. Guaranteed. So what was once positive will be negative, so therefore I just now take the reciprocal of 5, which is 1/5, and I am done. So that's the other school of thought, okay? So this one here, it's negative, this one will be positive, I take the reciprocal of 2, the reciprocal of 2 is 1/2. To give one more example of this, we'll throw in a 5. I will say that this is 5/3 is my slope. Again, this one's positive. My new one will be negative. Take the reciprocal, and I get 3/5. So my final answer would be 3/5. Now, these are my new slopes. That's all these things are representing here, are my new slopes, okay? So you can either choose to use the formula, which is simply multiply the reciprocal by negative 1 to get your answer, or you can use this. Whichever one you really want to use, doesn't matter. If you're looking for a way to calculate it and get it every single time, you do negative 1 times the reciprocal. You're good to go. Okay, so on to this, doing some examples of actually writing the equation of a line. So here we go. So the first example here is going to be much like when I talked about parallel. I basically just want to go ahead and get a perpendicular equation. I don't care what the answer is. I just want the equation that's going to be perpendicular. So where these come up, these types of questions will be like multiple choice. We'll say, hey, find the other one that is perpendicular. You'll do matching. So what you need to do for perpendicular, again, you will need to do a little bit of side work. So what I would suggest, okay, if you're that formula person, you take 3/4. You put the arrow, you say negative 1 times the reciprocal of 3/4, so negative 1 times 4/3, and you get your perpendicular slopes you are looking for is negative 4/3, okay? So, again, if you're the school of thought person, the other one here was 4/3, this one's positive, the other one's got to be negative, take the reciprocal of what you have, so flip 3/4, and you get 4/3. So if you're a person who's just intuitive and you can go plus minus, or if you're a person who needs the thing, there you go. But anyhow, I now just want to make an equation of a line. So I will say y equals negative 4/3 x minus 5. Now, for this example, I just want to point out that this plus or minus thing could be anything I want. I'm not putting any restrictions on it. I'm not giving you any more criteria. I'm literally just saying, get another equation. Just make sure that that equation that you write is perpendicular to that. Okay? And the only stipulation about perpendicular slopes is what we've got before us. So, moving on to the next one. All right, so now I do the same exact problem. Y equals 3/4 x plus 2. However, this time I'm telling you to write the equation line perpendicular to it. However, I add this extra bit of criteria, and the extra bit of criteria is that it also has to pass through this point 12,5. Well, if you haven't watched my video on finding the equation of a line passing through 2 points, I highly suggest doing so because you can't do this problem without doing it. So, here we go. The first thing you need to recognize is what's the slope. Because it's perpendicular, you must follow your method. So whether your method is 3/4, put the arrow, -1 times the reciprocal, which is 4/3, which produces -4/3. So my new slope is -4/3, or whether you jump directly from beginning to end by utilizing the what was once positive is now negative, and then flip them. So from here, I now have my new slope. So now I can go ahead, and whether I'm going to use whatever equation I want to use at this point, I now have slope, okay, and I now also have a point, so now I can write the equation of a line. The bare minimum that I need to write the equation of every line will be a slope and a point. I cannot write the equation of a line without slope and without a point. It is not possible. So here we go, with that in mind. There are two equations. So I will show this one with two equations, but then I will show you the equation that I stick with. So first off, I usually stick with y equals mx plus b. So at this point, I'm going to utilize substitution. So y equals mx plus b. M is what we call slope. That's the thing we calculated. So I replace m with -4/3. The point, coordinate points, come as x comma y. So I can replace x with a 12 via substitution, and I can replace y with a 5 via substitution, and I left with plus b. Now, why is this important? Because I need to solve for the new b. That's what's going to separate me apart from my other equation, the other thing to it. So I do -4/3 times 12, and I end up getting -16. So this is 5 plus b. The last thing I will do is I will add 16 to both sides, and what I get is b equals 21. So now there you have it. I am done with my equation. I've got my b, I've got my slope. I bring these two into one problem, and I say y equals -4/3x plus 21, and there's my equation finito. Now, there's another method you could have used, and that would be something called the point slope formula. The point slope formula is y minus y1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x1. So the way this formula works is that you substitute in for the things with subscripts. So I will go y minus my y1, so my y coordinate that I have is 5, equals m, which is -4/3, times x minus my x, which is 12. And what I do from here is I go ahead and I do my distributive property, and then I'm going to bring the 5 over. So distributive property gives me y minus 5 equals -4/3 x. -4/3 times -12 will be a +16. The last step is to add 5, and after I do that, it simplifies to this immediately, where y now equals -4/3 x plus 21. So it does not matter which formula you use, you will get to the same thing. It's just really preference of which formula you would like to use. So moving on. The last example. So the last example is usually the toughest example, because now they give you a problem in which you don't have it y equals, you have something called standard form. So if you watched my video on parallel lines before, I shared with you that if you have standard form, there is a little cheat you can use to find m, and that little cheat is taking -1 times a, dividing it by b. What you will need to know is that standard form comes in the form of ax plus by equals c. So for this particular problem, if I am using the cheat sheet, I don't need that 4, okay? That 4 is irrelevant. I won't be using it. So for us, if I'm using m, it is m is equal to -1 times a, which is the coefficient of x, which is just the number in front of x, which is 5, divided by the b, which is the number in front of y, which is a positive 2. So now what I am finding is the current slope. Be very careful of this. So this gives me m equals negative 5 over 2. So I have found the current slope. I have not found the perpendicular slope. I can't stress that enough. I found the current slope, not the perpendicular. To find the perpendicular, I must go through my steps. So you can choose to do negative 5 over 2, and if you're looking for a process, you simply take the reciprocal and multiply it by negative 1. So you take negative 1 times it by negative 2 over 5. So I'm simply just multiplying by the reciprocal by negative 1, and what that will produce me will be my positive 2 over 5. So again, if you're intuitive, you can jump right to the end, because what was once negative is now positive, and what was once on top is now on the bottom, so you are just flipping it. So either way, but if you're looking for a formula, the middle piece is kind of like your little formula that you can use. So now that I have my new perpendicular slope, I can now write my equation of my line. So the one that I use is y equals mx plus b. If you like that y2 minus y, or that y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, you go ahead and use that if you want. So anyway, y equals mx plus b. So here we go. I'm going to substitute in for y, my coordinate pair. So 3 equals, and my m is 2/5. My x was a 10. Plus b, the thing I don't know. Because remember, b comes in the form of the coordinate pair 0, b. If I had the coordinate pair with a 0 and then a number, I wouldn't be solving anything. I'd be putting my b there right away, but unfortunately, I do not have a coordinate pair that starts off with a 0. So I have to go through this process of solving. So I now get 3 equals 2/5 of 10, which is 4. So add b to that, subtract 4 to both sides, subtract 4 to both sides. I get negative 1 is what b is. So my final answer of my perpendicular equation is y equals 2/5 x minus 1, and then I am done. So that is the process of going through and doing perpendicular. If you need the process, like I said, remember, very importantly, that a process is this middle piece here where you can take the reciprocal of what you currently have, multiply it by negative 1, and you will have it. Okay, I hope that helps.